Grief. What is grief? Grief is when you lose somebody close to you, or maybe even lose a pet. These experiences in life can sometimes happen unexpectedly, or we could be expecting them if somebody has been given a terminal diagnosis, if they've been given a diagnosis of a few months to live. The feelings of grief can be extremely difficult to deal with, especially just after the event. What do you do? Many people don't seem to know what to do. If you ask them, they say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to express my feelings. Different cultures express their feelings of grief in different ways. It's traditional in my culture, in the UK, to express our feelings of grief by dressing in black, not just at the funeral, but for a period of what we call mourning. So, for no less than 6 weeks, but no more than 6 months. This gives people an opportunity to express their feelings of grief without having to try and put them into words. People can see that you're dressed in black and they know that you are grieving. Some individuals will not understand this symbolism, and they might say things to you like, why are you dressed in black? They may even say, you look very smart. But that's not the reason why you're doing it. The reason why you're doing it is because somebody close to you has passed over to the other side. They are no longer with us. They have died. So it seems that people around us don't always know how to behave around somebody while they're grieving. Before I go any further, you might think, why is this video on a computer science channel? The answer to that is simple. If you're a student, especially if you're a mature student, you may have to deal with these major life events that happen. So what do you do if somebody does die? What if you have deadlines to meet, assessments to make, assignments to complete at a specific date? You can't just stop. You have to carry on. You can speak to your tutor. Later on in the stages of your education, if you're at level 2 or level 3, you have no choice but to carry on, because even though you can get an extension for your assignments, it's going to put you behind elsewhere. When you experience feelings of grief, you may be left with the feeling that nobody understands, nobody can help. You may feel completely isolated, and you wouldn't be alone. These are normal and natural feelings that many of us experience while we're going through grief. It's okay to cry. This is a good way of calming the body down. It's okay to remember the loved one who has sadly passed away. So even if you're a student, you still have to deal with these life events, these significant life events. I feel that it's important to support students through their academic life, because students have to deal with real life experiences too. No two people are going to experience grief in the same way. What is grief for me might not be the same for you. And if I was to experience grief again, then I might not experience it in the same way, because the relationship that you have with that person affects how you grieve, how close you were, how significant they were in your life. So everybody is going to experience things individually, in a different way, because we're all individuals. What have people said about grief? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the Kubler-Ross model, has these stages of loss and dying. This can be applied to grief. The first stage would be denial. I can't believe that this happened. Other stages may be anger, bargaining. If I do this, can they come back? Can I be with them again if I jump through these series of hoops? A feeling of depression. would be another stage. And then finally, a feeling of acceptance. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to accept what's happened. If we look at other theories, and I'm getting these theories from Gross, Psychology, the Science of Mind and Behaviour. And this is from page 677 to 679. Bowlby's Phase Theory of Grief, 1980. Bowlby based this upon his theories of separation anxiety, of which he was commissioned to do in 1951 by WHO, the World Health Organization. This was to do a study on the war children who'd left London and other cities to escape the bombing from the Nazis in World War II. Bowlby decided, or theorized, that adult grief was somewhat like this separation anxiety, because somebody has gone. They are separated from somebody, a significant person. And they go through the same kind of stages. A phase of numbing, not really feeling much at all. A phase of yearning and searching. Where are they? Are they here? I want them. Another word for yearning might be pining, missing somebody. There's also a phase of disorganization and despair, of finding it really difficult to perform even the most simplest of tasks because the individual is in despair, the feelings of despair, and thus become greatly disorganized. Everyday life seems to be very difficult. Making a cup of tea would be difficult. Making the bed would be difficult, somewhat like depression. The final phase would be reorganization, where the individual reorganizes their life without the person that they are missing. Now, this doesn't mean that they just move on and forget about them, but they learn to live, they learn to cope without this individual, although life is never really going to be the same. Now, this idea is absolutely horrifying if you've just lost someone. The idea of moving on, accepting their loss, moving on and living a new life without them, organizing your life without them is a horrifying idea. And that often sends people back into the first stage of feeling numb or denial in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's model. How do we move on from losing a significant other, or a parent, or a child, or a pet? I have here Gross's book, Psychology, the Science of Mind and Behaviour, and I'm going to read a little bit from this book to you. This is Ramasy and deGroot's 9 Components of Grief. Shock, disorganization, denial, depression, guilt. This is one we haven't mentioned before, but often people report feeling guilty even though there was nothing that they could do. They may have attempted to resuscitate, to revive their loved one using CPR, but the person had been dead for too long. Or it just wasn't possible to bring them back. This can provoke great feelings of guilt. Another stage would be anxiety, aggression, resolution, reintegration, reintegrating into life. Again, when somebody's just lost somebody, reintegrating into life is not really something they really want to think about. They have no idea how they're going to reintegrate into life. They have no idea how they're going to cope and carry on without their loved one. And again, grief is different for everyone. You may be experiencing different feelings, different emotions. So what tactics can you use to help with the pain? Some people turn to drugs and alcohol. But I ask you, do you really think that they are going to help you through the grieving process? Wearing black is a way of expressing your feelings, as I've mentioned before at the beginning of the video. You have to try and find joy in life when you just don't feel like having much joy for life, when your partner or your father or your mother or your sister is not around. Maybe it's a friend. How are you meant to enjoy the gardening when this person is gone? There are bereavement counselling services, and if you're in the UK, I highly recommend Cruise. You can try talking to family members. They won't always understand because grief for them is going to be different from their perspective. Many people report a feeling of isolation and loneliness because nobody understands what it feels like for them. Denial. Denial is a little bit more than just denying that somebody has died. This is actually continuing as if the individual is still alive. Talking to them as if they were still around. Preparing meals for them as if they were still around. Organising the garden in a way that they would like, as if they were still around in order to please them. Do you find yourself doing any of these activities? Do you find yourself thinking, that would be nice, when you see something in a shop that the person that you've lost would like? Shock is usually the first thing that people experience when they realise that somebody is dead, or if they discover that a loved one is dead. There is also a delayed reaction to grief, where some individuals can go years, decades even, without actually grieving the loss of a loved one. Perhaps grandparents, a death early on in life. So if you were a child and you lost somebody, you may have skipped that grief because you weren't old enough to be able to process what you needed to be able to process. But you still need to go through that feelings of grief. That's why I feel that it's very good to set a grieving time. A period of time in your life where you set aside for grieving. And as I said earlier, from 6 weeks to 6 months, dressing in black. To give yourself the opportunity to remember how significant somebody was in your life and to express your feelings of loss in a very physical and symbolic way. It's better than getting angry, right? It's not the fault of people around us in many cases. How many people are there who are watching this video right now who never grieved a lost one? They think that they did, but never really went through the grieving process because they're still in a stage of denial. It's okay. No one should punish themselves over this. Just accept that somebody has gone. But you can only do that when you're ready to accept that they're gone. The stages in the different theories that I've mentioned don't have a set sequence. Obviously, shock and denial are usually at the beginning, and acceptance and reorganization are at the end. But people can go into all of the other stages more than once, and in any order. If you have any thoughts or feelings on grief, if you've experienced grief, feel free to leave a comment in the section below. And share your feelings only if you want to. If you think that it may help somebody else not to feel so alone, then please do leave a comment.
I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a thumbs up and come check out my channel.